everyone. This is Robert Landau, and I'd like to welcome you to the second episode of a show called Presenting Your Retirement Center Management Staff. For this episode, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome a very esteemed member of RCM's executive staff and an extremely important member of the executive staff as well. It is my pleasure to welcome Gwen Wilburn. Her title at RCM is Senior Vice President of Clinical Operations. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And thank you for doing this with us and for us today. Mm-hmm. So Gwen, let's start with a little bit of your personal background. Where are you from?
Originally from Alabama. I wasn't there very long. Mostly I've grown up in Texas.
And so where in Alabama? Small town, Alabama?
Very small town, a small town called Millery. I was actually born in Mobile, but my family was from Millery, so it's a very tiny town. I don't know if you can find it on a map.
So what's it close to? Is it close to?
It's about 50 miles from Mobile. So.
Cool. So what was it like growing up in small town Alabama? Because I'm from New York City. I just can't even imagine.
No, you can't imagine. You can't imagine. I love small towns. Just everybody knows everybody. Everybody's family. So, I mean, you don't go anywhere without running into somebody that you know. And that's a good feeling to me. I like that.
I just realized this now. There seems to be a correlation between growing up in a small town and having all of those rewards that you're starting to address just now, and working in the senior retirement community industry. Because each building, mm-hmm. each community is its own small town.
That's very true.
And that, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. This came from you, not from me.
Yeah, very true.
Very cool. Very cool. So how long did you stay in Alabama?
So I went back and forth. We moved, my first year ever at school, I was in England actually. Then we moved back to Alabama, and then we moved to Texas, then back to Alabama. So I was only in Alabama for, I moved to Texas 4th grade, and then I stayed in Texas.
And where in Texas? Houston?
Houston, and then I was in Houston for just a little while, and then we moved to Magnolia, and so I actually graduated from Magnolia. Obviously, I love the small town feel.
Yes, you've kept it with you.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And I live in Montgomery now.
Yes, another kind of small town.
It's growing. It's growing.
Yeah, what isn't growing anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? Brothers, sisters?
I have one brother. He's a younger brother, much younger, 7 years younger.
Cool.
So that's my only brother, only sibling. I have husband, been married for 20 years. I have
Congratulations.
Grown kids. I've got a stepdaughter that's 21. I've got a daughter that's 20. She'll soon be 25. She's a school teacher, 8th grade English, and a son that's 18, a senior this year.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about your career path mm-hmm. that got you to what you're doing now. And even before we go there, can you give us your job description? Mm-hmm. What is your job description with what you do?
Anything that comes my way. No. No, you never know what you're going to expect. So as with the clinical department, so really what I do is I make sure that our clinical department is functioning at the best capacity. I look for ways to improve our clinical department. I want to make sure that our processes are the best that they can be. If there's processes that we need, I want to implement those. If there's processes that need improvement, I want to help improve those. I want to make the residents' lives better with our processes, and also for the associates that are in our community, help them with that as well. I mean, the more training that they can get, the better off our residents are going to be and the associates that are working there.
So when you say our clinical department, how
mm-hmm.
would you define that specifically?
So that's with our regional team of nurses, with our medication aides, with our nurses in the communities, That is our entire clinical department.
And that has everything to do with resident wellness.
Absolutely.
Yes? Wow, that's a big component. So tell me your career track that led you up to this position that you have with RCM now. How did you start in this field?
Oh my goodness. So I actually started out in labor and delivery. Imagine that. So
As a nurse?
As a nurse.
Yeah.
Huge difference from one industry to another. But that was my passion. I loved it. And then I have a lot of family members that are nurses. And so one of my aunts was working in, she had a personal care home. And so she was doing that, and I decided to start helping her with that personal care home.
Cool.
And decided that, you know what, this is a pretty amazing field. These seniors have a lot to offer. Each one had a story to tell. Definitely it was a growing industry. And so that's how I ended up in the senior living industry, is through my aunt's personal care home.
So I need to go back to the labor and delivery thing, and then we'll get back to the
Okay.
senior thing. So were you present when babies were born?
Oh, absolutely.
So what is that like? Asking from somebody who has never been there.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a miracle. It truly is. I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds so cliche, but that's truly the only word to describe it. It's a miracle.
It is truly, life is a miracle, right? But when it begins in that way. So how many, on a typical day, how many births were you present at and a part of?
On a typical day?
Yeah.
Oh, it would depend if there was a full moon or not. So
It would depend if there was a full,
oh,
how cool.
honestly, it has something to do with it. So no, there would be some. I worked at a small hospitals, never the big hospitals. So some days we would have no births whatsoever. Others there would be 5 or 6. So I didn't have the 20 or so. It was always small hospitals, but.
So when there were 5 or 6 births a day that you help administer, did it ever get kind of stressful, kind of tired? On the 4th one, were you kind of going,
Well, you tend to be with one at a time. So sometimes you'd go to one, have that delivery, go to another one. Yes, I knew it was time to exit that field whenever I no longer wanted to be in that room with the patient. I loved labor and delivery for so long, for 10 years.
10 years?
10 years.
Wow. Wow.
And I'd be bedside. That was my thing. I loved it. And whenever I didn't want to be bedside, I wanted to be out at the desk watching the monitor instead of in the room. I knew I was ready to move on to something else.
So you probably saw a lot of emotional scenes with fathers, fathers to be, husbands. That just is incredible. So when you started working in the senior aspect of things, what were some of the things that you started to realize were so very special about doing that?
They've lived their life, and they have so much more to offer, so much more to give. They have so many incredible stories to tell. If you take your time and sit down and talk to a senior, they're going to tell their story to you, and there's some incredible stories to hear.
Yes.
So it gives me chills to this day to think about some of the interactions that I've had with some of the seniors that I've met and over my career of senior living. They truly are amazing people.
Agreed, and have a lot to teach people coming up,
Yes.
How many years have you been in the senior realm of things?
Oh, let's see, 16 now.
16 years, wow. Because that's a good stretch of years, right? And that is dedication, that's heart, that's focus. I can only imagine everything you've been through to get you to this moment that will carry you through for future moments. In these 16 years, what would you say are some of the most rewarding either instances or things that you have learned concerning your service to the senior market?
Oh my goodness. I think going through some of the challenging situations, some of the Hurricane Harvey. I mean, going through challenges like that, that's when you see not only what the seniors have to offer, but how the teams come together. That's when you really see, as humans, as Americans, as people working in the senior living industry, what they really do. I mean, people really bond together. They give of themselves. Everyone has a unique something to contribute. They truly are incredible people that work in the senior living industry as a whole. And going through those kind of situations, it really brings out the best in people. Not only in the seniors. I mean, they jump in there and work sometimes as well, the ones that can. So that's whenever you really get to see what everyone's made of.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it takes a tragedy to really bring out the best in people, right? And again, that kind of comes from a small town mindset, a small town mentality, because as a nurse, it seems to me that you roll up your sleeves and you just dive in to a situation to help make it better. So to the clinical things that you're working on for RCM, what would you say in your department, and I guess that department is felt in each RCM community across the board in one way or another, what would you say are like the top objectives in terms of serving the residents based on what you do and what those you oversee do?
Oh goodness. Well, we want to clinical initiatives. Training of associates. That's huge. Well-trained associates, deliver good care.
Yep.
So that's a huge initiative. Things like a really good medication training, medication aids that we do a really good training for those medication aids. So the more knowledge they have, the better they feel about what they're doing. So I feel that knowledge is power. If you encourage them to learn more, they feel more empowered to do more. So I do feel like orientation is a huge part of what we do. Other programs like quality initiatives, falls programs, skin integrity programs. Let's see, what else are we doing?
So how would a fall prevention program be administered at RCM community? How is that done? Is that done on a one-to-one basis? Is it done, in a larger type situation? How do you get that information across? Because that's so important, fall prevention. I mean, everything you do and your staff does is hugely important, but fall prevention, that's a huge topic.
It is a big one, and right now our VP of Clinical Operations is working on even a more robust falls prevention program, so she's really trying to develop that even more so. So working with our therapy providers, working with really all departments in the community to have what's called a stop and watch, and you may have heard of that before, where if there's anything that is different with the residents, we want to stop and let someone else know that there's something different with that resident, because if we can intervene ahead of time, that's going to hopefully prevent that fall. So let's prevent it from happening instead of being reactive. Let's be proactive.
That's huge.
And help strengthen the resident, because we do know that if they're weaker, it's going to increase their fall risk. And so if we work with our therapy providers that are in the communities, that will help prevent the falls as well. Watch the medications, if there's medication interaction, so that's another part of the fall program. Training, there's always training going to be involved to make sure that we're looking at the apartments to see if there's safety hazards. So all of those things and so many more that are all rolled up into a good fall prevention program.
Very good, very good. So a couple more questions before we close. What is a typical day like for you on the job? and I guess it's you probably visit RCM communities, and then sometimes you're in corporate, but kind of like a typical day for you, what would that look like?
Yeah, they are different, so it does vary. So it depends on if there's conference calls that day, if there's meetings that day, if I'm going to visit a community that day. So it really does vary on what's going on that day. Sometimes we have trainings, so it's going to depend on what's going on that day. So it could be if I'm in a community, then I may be looking at charts, or looking at visiting with residents, or doing some one-on-one training with the nurses that are in the community, or observing a medication pass, or auditing a med cart, things like that. Other times it may be looking at the programs and seeing how I can make those better. It could be working with the vendors and seeing what we can do to help vendor relationships within the community. So it's going to vary on day to day.
It's a lot, but
Sometimes.
everything that you mentioned is vitally important for wellness, for continued health. You know, that's huge. That's
Sure.
huge. Future objectives of your department. What are some of the things that you want to accomplish that you haven't had a chance to get to yet?
Goodness, we have a several page spreadsheet of things that we want to get to. I think we're going into 2022 on our clinical initiative spreadsheet. So,
Wow.
yeah, we definitely want to. We launched a clinical training, a clinical orientation. So we want to make that even better. I know I keep going back to training, but it's vital. It
Yes,
really is.
training is huge.
So we want to do better with that. We did start doing a new nurse training, so we're going to keep doing that. So when the new nurses start, we're going to bring them maybe to the corporate office, or meet them at their community to start doing some more training there. Other things we're going to do, let's see, we're looking at a retention program for the nurses. So I'm not going to say much about that yet, but that is something that we're going to look at.
Great.
Anything we can do to increase the safety and well-being of our residents is what we're going to look at doing. You know, making that more robust falls program is going to be a key. Medication training is going to be key. We're going to increase the medication training for the medication aides. Right now it's about 6 hours. We're going to look at extending that, so that way they feel better about what they're doing. We're going to look at doing that increasing our skin integrity program.
Skin integrity?
Skin integrity.
Wow, skin integrity. I love that.
Right. That's top on our list right now.
I can see why your spreadsheet of things to accomplish extends into 2022.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
yeah.
By the list you just gave, it sounds like it would even extend further.
Those are just a few of the things. I mean,
Yeah.
we really have quite a few. We're, the flu vaccination program. You know, we're going to look at making that even better. You know, making sure that as many get vaccinated as possible. So I mean, we've done it for this past several years, but we want to make sure that we get even more vaccinated. So quite a few things that we've got going on, but anything to make the lives of our residents better, safer. Their well-being is key. Yeah.
I love that. Anything to make the lives of RCM residents better. That's a wonderful initiative to serve, right? Because really, I'm talking to a former nurse here. I think life is all about being of service to others.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, last and final question. If you could address the RCM residents, based on who you are and all the wonderful things you and your staff does for this company, what would you say to the residents, just from your heart to theirs?
Oh, goodness. I don't get out into the community as much as I used to. And sometimes I miss that. I miss the interaction that I have with the residents, because I love interaction with the residents. I mean, that fills my bucket, right? I mean,
Yes.
that means a lot to me. So if if I don't get to serve a resident, I feel like I'm serving someone that is, right?
Right.
Or being that mentor or inspiration. I hope to inspire them to love on a resident the way I like to love on a resident.
Yes.
So, being in that position, that's what I hope I'm giving to others, is to, be that advocate for the resident, because that's what we're here for. We're here for the residents, and that's the bottom line. We want to be the best we can for our residents and be that advocate.
Yes,
So.
well said. So fill in the rest of the sentence. Dear RCM resident.
Dear RCM resident, I hope that you enjoy living in the RCM communities. I hope that the clinical staff treats you with the utmost respect, because you deserve that and more.
I love that. Beautifully said. And with that, we'll close.
Okay.
I would like to thank Gwen Wilburn, who happens to be the incredible Senior Vice President of Clinical Operations for Retirement Center Management. Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you.
Yes, our pleasure.